Good morning, Revolution, everybody, and welcome to our stream. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Welcome, Anita. Welcome, Pooja. Welcome, Chris. Hope you're doing good. Hope everybody who's viewing us is doing well. We are streaming on Twitch and on Facebook and on YouTube. And our program is going to focus on the anti-DOGE uprising that is taking place all over the country. Workers, students, unemployed folks, small business folks are mad as hell at what is taking place. And folks, a month or two ago, we were complaining, where's the fight back against those, Where are the main organization in the labor and civil rights movement? Where's the Democratic Party? There was a huge vacuum in the country. And then there were the January 18th protests. And then there were the President's Day boycotts and marches. Um, and, and now AOC and Bernie launched this anti-oligarchy tour and place after place, 10, 15, 20, 30,000 people are showing up. And today we have Pooja in Colorado and Chris in Arizona, and we're going to hear from them what happened in those rallies. Pooja, let's start with you. Talk to us briefly about the rally in Denver. Who was there? What was the atmosphere like? What were people saying?
It was incredible. It was, I think they said, the largest rally that Bernie's ever had. It was around 30,000 people. It was gigantic. It was in downtown Denver, right by the Capitol. There were numerous union leaders who spoke from the UFCW, from the Colorado Education Association, and also a really remarkable employee from the FTC gave an incredible speech as well. So it was a really interesting mix of people, right? Like a lot of folks who just, I think, had never been to a rally before, never had any sort of political experience. I think just a lot of people coming, a lot of families, a lot of young children. I always think a sign of a healthy movement rally is, or a movement space, is when there are children involved. So I was really excited to see a lot of young kids there as well. So it was really fascinating to see people really being anti-DOGE and anti-Elon Musk. A lot of the signage was anti-Elon Musk. I don't know about you, Chris, but it certainly was that way in Denver. And I'm really excited to see that the messaging is starting to be what we were, I think, talking about. Here's a picture of me and my baby, who seems very unimpressed with Bernie Sanders, but was quite impressed with the whole situation. Didn't fuss the entire time either, by the way. And so that was a great week for her. She had her first rally and went to 3 rallies actually that week. So she had an amazing week. So yeah, so it was just a very it was an electric environment. I think a lot of people were ready to take steps. I think I'll be curious to see kind of what happens next, and where the escalation is, right? Because I think it's really good to have lots of people coming together and coming out in rallies. But then I as an organizer always want to know what are we doing? What are we harnessing that energy and doing with next? But it was a great first step.
I read that they were using these rallies at Pooja as an organizing tool, that they were collecting email addresses and phone numbers. They're taking a page from the old Obama presidential campaign in 2008. Did that happen in Denver?
It might have. I kind of had baby stuff going on, so no one asked me for my contact information. But I'm sure there were. But it could have also just been there are so many people there that maybe there was no effective way to gather from everyone, which is a question that I have. Right, like when you are organizing in mass this way, what is the easiest way for us to gather data, right? So yeah, no one asked me for my information, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
One of the things that they did back in the day was that they would say something like they would have a message, text, fight back to DOGE. or 5454, and then they would collect people's phone numbers in that way. Chris, tell us about the rally in Tucson. Where was it held? How many people were there? What was the spirit like? Can't hear you, Chris. You're muted. Still can't hear you. Okay, we'll come back to you in just a minute, um, and hear more about the rally in Tucson. We can't hear you, Chris. So we're going to go to Anita. You might want to log out and come back in. In the meantime, Anita, we've been very critical in the past about the Democratic Party and their failure to respond to the election. But not just the Dems, but some others. Um, why aren't people standing up like they stood up in 2017? And this time it took the left to respond. And I remember somewhere people asking Bernie, why did you wait so long to, step out there? And he replied that he was waiting for some of the younger forces to step to the plate. And when people didn't, he called AOC and she said, hell yeah, let's do it. And they started uh, organizing these rallies. And that says something about the need for the left to take initiative. And there's lessons in that for us as well, don't you think?
Absolutely, it's really exciting to see some of the activities. That I watched the Tucson rally on YouTube, and some other rallies, but also Ro Khanna is going into Republican districts where the Republican representative refuses to have a town hall, and has his own town hall where he invites people to talk about DOGE and what they feel about what the administration is doing. I think the Democratic Party is not a monolith. An organization of human beings, and there are a variety of human beings and perspectives in that coalition. And of course, the front against fascism has to be a pretty big tent. So I think Ro Khanna is doing great work. I think Bernie and AOC are doing wonderful service by getting people out. It also empowers people. I'm here in Florida, and has empowered people to call their representatives and demand to know when the town hall that they are going to have is. And of course, they're not planning a town hall, or if they are, they're just planning to invite their supporters. But it gets us, it gives people something to hang on to. And of course, in Florida, we've got an election coming up in a few days, and we might even have a chance of making an inroad in District 6 around the Daytona Beach area. The people are so angry that they may just vote against the Republican who's up to take Mike Walz's old seat. So things are moving in among the Democrats. I'm happy to say. Later,
I was just
better
going to
late
ask you
than
about that, because you were very pessimistic about the chances in
never.
Florida. So it's changed there a little bit, huh?
It has. I was pessimistic. I take it back. People are just donating a lot of money to the opponent. He's all over TikTok and other social media trying to get support, and people are just angry. And here in Florida, Trump won that district by 30 points. So
Hmm.
it isn't. I think if the Democrat, even if the Democrat loses, but by a much smaller margin, it will send a signal. And I think what the Republicans are running scared right now, and their decision on reversing Elise Stefanik's nomination to the BUN ambassador is another example of them being a little bit nervous now. And given the big scandals coming down, I think the Republicans are finally in disarray, maybe, we can say. We'll see.
They're in disarray. And then there was that election in Pennsylvania for the state Senate where Trump won by 15 and the Democrat uh, beat him. Chris, back to you. What happened in Tucson?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay? Sorry about that technical difficulty there. Yeah, no. Here in Tucson, Arizona, we had a very similar energy at our protest here. AOC and Bernie spoke at Catalina High School, and we got roughly. I mean, it was a huge crowd and just tremendous amount of energy. Roughly 22,000 people from the estimates I've seen, and the football field, the bleachers, and the entire field itself was just packed with people. And I think very similar to the vibe in the other protests we've been seeing, there was a very broad mass movement, a very eclectic mix of people. I ran into a lot of activists I knew that I'd seen around Tucson before. I saw a lot of new faces, which is always good. People that I'd never seen at any protests before in Arizona. A lot of families. There was a broad array of issues being represented. There was a lot of pro-Palestinian shirts, signs, keffiyehs. There was a lot of anti-Musk and DOGE. I think was clearly the most single biggest issue that was mobilizing people and getting people out there. There was just a tremendous amount of anger about the way they've just been cutting social services and just dismantling the federal government. A lot of educators really frustrated with what they've been doing with the Department of Education. A lot of representation from the different the teachers unions, from my union, UFCW. But no, it was really great energy, and I think there's a tremendous amount of anger out there with people, and it was great to see people coming into the street. And I had the exact same question that she had. I want to see this energy being turned into organization, and that was my question. Like, how are we going to take this mass energy and put it towards something productive and sustainable?
Well, the next demonstration, we're going to be talking about it in a few minutes, is on April the 5th in 50
Mm-hmm.
states around the country. And
Mm-hmm.
people are lining up, organizing, getting ready for that. It's just a wave after wave after wave of a protest. And of course, if you think about it, the preparations now are being made for the midterms. You know,
Sure.
these movements, these protests, this organization is setting the stage for the 2026 midterm elections. But Pooja, we're not quite there yet, and some people are saying that the critique that nothing what was happening is a little overstated. You know, and I saw an article that quoted a institute at Harvard University. It's called the Harvard Crowd Counting Consortium. The ruling class counts everything. They got their fingertips on everything. And they said that on January 18th, that day saw the largest number of protests in a single day for over a year. And they went on to say that since January 22nd, we have seen twice as many street protests that took place during the same period 8 years ago. In February of this year, there were over 2,085 protests um, against DOGE, for immigrant rights, for Palestine, against Tesla, uh, compared to 937 protests in February of 2017. Is the same kind of thing happening in Denver? Uh, is there like a constant a stream of protests over the last month and a half or so?
Oh
And
yeah,
who's
absolutely.
organizing it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's, like you were saying, there's immigrant rights. Dolores Huerta was actually just in Denver last week, I think, to be part of an immigrant rights protest. There's stuff popping off at the Capitol every single day. I think that this is a really exciting time if you are on our side of things, because the level of engagement is good, right? Because I think we were all concerned that the people were depressed, and like what was going to be the pushback against what's happening at the federal level. I think there's also a push in what's happening at the union level, at the state level. A lot of different campaigns are popping off. I'm just seeing people really start to come together and try to resist the regime for what it is. That said, I have some concerns, right? Like my concerns really are not from what we're doing so much, but from what the retaliation is going to be, right? My concern also about April 5th and all these things moving forward, targeting Black and Brown people, particularly who come out to these rallies, targeting people on student visas, targeting people who are visibly not white in any sort of way. ICE is a big presence out here, like it is in most places, and I think ICE is sort of acting in a manner that's concerning for a lot of reasons, but specifically, they're acting like they have no laws that they need to pay attention to. I'm also concerned a little bit about Elon Musk spending so much money in the race in Wisconsin. And about the fairness of all elections moving forward. So I think what is happening in retaliation from the public is good. I'm then worried about what is the counter retaliation that's going to happen from the feds and the folks in charge.
This is a big question, I think, and you're absolutely right, and that raises the need for a mass movement against political repression. You know, back in the day, there was the International Labor Defense. And there was a huge movement in defense of immigrants, and we want to say we declare our solidarity with the students who are being picked up. Did you see what happened in Boston at Tufts University? 4 or 5 people in mass approached that young woman. They didn't even pull out any ID. They just grabbed her and took off her backpack and handcuffed her and took her away. And
Well,
then there
and
were
I was
people
seeing
who,
that she had her phone. She was on her phone, right? So the other issue is when you have your phone unlocked, they can just take it and look at it. And I think specifically for activists, like we have to be very like if you're outside and you're on your phone and it's unlocked, be wary that they will just take it and use whatever they see on there as proof to cause you harm. So I think that's what happened to her as well. So just
very,
something to be
very
mindful
important
of.
thing. Good point. Good point. Chris, in Arizona, are you seeing in Tucson? Are you seeing a increase in activity amongst the labor movement, immigrant rights? I imagine the immigrant rights movement is very active. What's happening? Who's involved from your point of view?
Absolutely. Just this week we had a protest for Mahmoud Khalil, to free Mahmoud Khalil, downtown Tucson. We had a protest just yesterday, at the University of Arizona against the new president of the university's policy to basically totally capitulate to Trump's demands that universities dismantle DEI and diversity initiatives, defunding the LGBTQ resource center on campus. So there was a huge protest against that to try and preserve these diversity initiatives on campus. But there's just been a ton of stuff going on. So on education, on Palestine solidarity, against this wave of political repression that we're beginning to see escalate under the Trump administration, against particularly people on student visas. But the one thing that's really surprised me is because I've been active with the pro-Palestinian protests for the last year and a half, but these new protests, I think, since Trump have been getting elected, are seeing a huge increase in turnout. And just recently, there are these weekly anti-Tesla protests that have been getting started, and they've been getting a huge turnout as well. Over 1,000 people and new faces, people that I hadn't seen at a protest before. So it's really good to see that it's mobilizing outside of just the activist community into the broader Tucson, mass kind of movement. So it's very heartening to see that there's a lot of
Someplace
energy
I
and anger
read
here on
that
the streets.
Someplace I read that in some of these demonstrations, about 2/3 of the people are new. And that says that there's a mass radicalization taking place, New cohorts of people are being affected by these cuts, are being affected by the attack by a DOGE and are coming out to protest. Anita, protests can take many forms, letter writing campaigns, petitions, phone banking, voting, and boycotts. Boycotts of Target, Amazon, and Tesla have hit the stage over the past several weeks, and Tesla, I read somewhere, lost $500 billion in value since inauguration day, almost a trillion over the course of the last year, but since inauguration day, 500 billion. The effectiveness of the boycotts has surprised me. Did it surprise you as well?
It did, and I think, I mean, sadly, I think Elon Musk has gained so much money in satellite contracts and other things that he's doing using his position with the government to amass more wealth for himself, even as his stock loses money. And to see, the Trump administration shamelessly peddling Tesla stock and Tesla cars, it's so crass, and I think that's turning people off, definitely. But I think, yeah, there are a lot of different forms of protest, and that's why I'm really interested in these town halls. Sociologists have to make up big words for things, and there was a term called repertoires of contention. How do you show your contention against the government? You have little repertoires, and there were methods that were used before, maybe not aren't relevant now, but these town halls are really striking a chord, and people want to get out and get together with other like-minded people. Chris mentioned the Tesla dealerships in Columbus. We started a Tesla. There was a Tesla protest at the dealership, the big dealership they have in Columbus. One or two people showed up at the first one. Now 500 people are there every Saturday, and it's organized by some Democrats, but also AFL-CIO, local officials, and it's just people want to come out now, and I hate to say this, but it's also spring, and people love to. I mean, protests tend to get more motivated in these months. So I think we're going to see a big wave of protests coming out. And I agree with Pooja that we have to worry about what the pushback is going to be, because indeed this tomorrow, the Columbus Tesla protest, the Proud Boys of Columbus are promising to be in the crowd taking pictures and trying to identify people. So they're really trying to intimidate people, but I don't think that's going to work. I think people are just so angry at Elon Musk and the idea of this billionaire hoarding money and then trying to manipulate elections left and right, including Wisconsin and other places. So I think there's going to be a big wave right now, and people are going to take all sorts of ways of protesting.
Well, we're not going to be intimidated, and we're not going to be moved. And Pooja, that includes on April the 5th on these hands-off demonstration. Hands off the post office, no privatization, hands off Social Security, hands off Medicaid, on down the line. And curiously, Pooja, somebody told me the other day that one of the demands on the April 5th demonstration is hands off Ukraine. And I was like, what? Hands off Ukraine? No, I'm sorry. Hands off NATO, not hands off Ukraine. Hands off NATO. Um, and I was like, really? And then I thought about it. I said, well, this is a broad, multi-class movement against Trump. That's kind of the nature of the Popular Front. But it poses a question for those of us who are opposed to NATO. NATO is an arm of U.S. imperialism and the imperialism of the European Union and so on and so forth. Um, and so, what should our approach be? And I'm going to ask each of you this question. Should we endorse it anyway? Should we participate but not endorse? Or should we boycott? Pooja, what do you think?
I think the nature of organizing en masse means that you're always going to deal with opinions that may not exactly mirror yours. Union organizing is very it is like this, right? Because you really need to have a majority to a supermajority of the entire workforce to really have a powerful union, right? It's the same sort of thing here. And like to build a powerful union, you have people on the right, on the left, you have people who are not political, whatever. You have to really bring them together to be able to fight the boss, fight the employer, right? So to me, the way that I look at this scenario is sort of similar. Right now, the issue is fascism. The issue is that we, the people in general, are having our, they're disappearing us. They're killing us. They're throwing citizens in El Salvadorian jails. They're not giving due process to folks. There's a bigger overarching issue happening right now, which means that some of this like sectarian issue stuff, which is not to say that the NATO issue is a sectarian issue, but like I don't think that we can get distracted by this thing that the left sometimes does, which is like become kind of perfectionist about what everyone that's coming to join us in solidarity, every single one of these opinions, right? I think through the process is how you move people through. They radicalize as they spend time with people, as they understand more, as their political education furthers. And I think we should view this as an opportunity to organize with people that we may not necessarily have thought about organizing with in the past, and also thinking about if they have imperfect opinions like this one, like how do we move them along the political spectrum to where we feel better about having them be a part of our movements, right? I don't think we should shut down. I don't think we should not endorse. I don't think we should not participate. But I don't think that we have to be like, we agree with every single one of these demands, because that's not true. We do agree with the overarching idea of needing to fight the broader fascist takeover of our country and really of the globe, because it's happening in places all around the world.
So you see, it's an organizing opportunity. It's an opportunity to struggle with people. It's an opportunity to build the United Front, because the United Front concept is let's agree on the most basic question. We're going to put everything else aside, those points at which we disagree. Chris, what do you think? Is it the NATO issue a deal breaker? Do we endorse? Do we participate but not endorse? Or do we boycott?
I think that's definitely a very, very complicated question. Definitely something I noticed at the protests was there's a lot of pro-war in Ukraine. There was some less NATO, but representation for signs and stuff at the protests. But broadly speaking, I think there's an attempt by the liberal establishment to kind of conflate the attacks on domestic infrastructure and the Department of Education, Social Security, basic things like this, with the institutions of U.S. imperialism power, on a broader international scale. People on the left lamenting the, defunding of USAID and Voice of America and Radio Free Asia and these different state propaganda outfits of the United States government. So it's. I think we should be very careful about letting them conflate those two issues and letting them associate the idea with the American masses that these things are in their interest in the same way basic social services are domestically. So I think we should be very careful about that going forward. I think we should obviously be participating in these protests, but I think we should be using it as an opportunity to educate people through struggle as we're struggling alongside them. What are the issues with NATO expansionism or with these different U.S. Kind of soft imperialist powers? So I don't think it's a one or the other, but I think we should definitely be very, very careful going forward.
Okay, good enough.
Mhm.
I hear what you're saying. Anita, to you, endorse, jump in.
I would, oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I want to agree with both Pooja and Chris has a good point too. We have to be careful about how we're doing this, but I think this is a great opportunity. It's a national thing, but a national effort which will be really, which may have really good press. I mean, we might see each other, but in local events. And I think that we've been talking about this quite a bit in recently, how these little local events, so long as they're strategic and coordinated nationally, they can be really effective. And I think that's what's going to happen this the weekend of April 5th, next a week from tomorrow. I think we'll see. And I had heard too that that it included hands off NATO, and I didn't believe it at first, and I did go to the hands off website to look at it took a little bit of digging before I did find that sign that said hands off NATO among many slogans that were there that we would fully agree with. So I think we have to work with people on the issues that we all agree on, that fascist tendencies in the Trump administration's actions that they've taken are unacceptable, and we cannot tolerate them. We're going to protest them until we make a victory out of it. So I think I would endorse. Well, maybe not endorse, but I think we should all participate in our local April 5th demonstrations. Definitely.
We're living in a moment where we need the unity of the broadest forces, but the struggle just can't be broad. It also has to be deep, and in our circumstances, deep means that we want the trade unions and the working class to lead, you know. But even there, as Pooja points out, there are different points of view, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, One of the great things that's happening is that the trade union movement nationally and locally and statewide is beginning to step to the plate on a whole number of issues, but it's still uneven, and when the that budget resolution was about to hit the table, I know that the AFL-CIO was approached and they didn't take a stand on it, and I imagine the reason was that there were different points of view in the federation. So, but in order to affect people's point of view, you had to be able to walk the walk with them as you talk the talk. You know, I mean, you can talk the talk all you want, but if you're not engaged with broad masses of people, ain't nobody listening to you. You're talking to yourself. You know, you're preaching to the choir, and that might sound good, and you might have a nice voice, but it ain't having a big impact. Um, and this gets to the issue of the unity of the anti uh, uh, MAGA movement, and how we relate to others on the left. People with no point of view, people who are social democrats, liberals, and so on and so forth. And with people like AOC and Bernie and others, we agree on most questions. on health care, on the environment, on abortion rights. But when it comes to foreign policy questions, not so much. Um, and that gets to the question of can these folks lead, or don't we really need to have a conversation, Pooja, about creating not only a new domestic policy that goes further than they wanted to go so far, but also a new foreign policy? And isn't the time for that conversation now?
Yes. We need fresh blood. We need fresh blood in all forms and walks of leadership. I think it's obvious, foreign policy is one issue, but almost in every other issue as well, the current Democratic leadership is woefully unprepared for this moment, and it's woefully unengaged in this moment. You have, Chuck Schumer going on a book. He was supposed to go on a book tour instead of actually fighting against the budget, right? So there is a lot of space, I think, right now for, I think the beauty of what AOC and Bernie are doing, and Bernie has been doing for his whole career and through every opportunity that he ran for president, is to just bring new people into caring about these topics, making it feel more like something that regular people can be. Sometimes I think politics can feel a little bit complicated and far away for most people. They feel like they don't know enough to engage with it. And I think AOC and Bernie do a really good job of talking about things in a very layman's terms sort of way. It makes it very approachable, right? So I think a part of what they are really doing, which they've been doing, but I think is going to be important moving forward, is just bringing new people on board. AOC was the first of the squad that was elected, and then after her, so many other folks were elected as well. Again, I have many questions about fair and free elections and all these things moving forward, but I think the most important thing that we need is to have new people come into the movement, and that means think about when you came into this movement in whatever shape or form that you came in. You didn't have perfect politics. I'm sure everyone has perfect politics now that are listening to this, but you didn't. And you had to be moved and you had to be organized. And that's what our job, going back to the previous question too, like that's our job as people who are in the party, people who are working to make a better world. It is our job to be inclusive and open to people, bring in new leadership and develop them. And that's what I think is like the biggest, most beautiful thing that's happening right now.
Well, I thought my politics were perfect way back then, but I've learned that they were a little bit less than that since. Pooja, you have the last word. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. Just to be clear, we applaud and support the initiative that AOC and Bernie took. Nobody else was doing it, you know.
Mhm.
They stepped to the plate, you know. That was extremely important. Uh, and we hope that they keep on doing it, and others are joining them. It's not just Ro Khanna. It's Tim Walz also is holding rallies in red states. You know, more power to you. You know, the more rallies, the better. But as we go forward, you know, we have to fight more and more and more for the trade unions and for workers to take the lead in this fight. And Anita, as we go forward, the party and others, we need to have a conversation about refashioning a progressive working class agenda on both domestic and international issues. We're not going to be able to go forward unless we can deal with the Pentagon and the war budget. You know, we're not going to be able to go forward unless we can develop peaceful relationships with China, if only for our ability to breathe, given the existential environmental crisis. We're not going to be able to go forward unless we're able to normalize relations with Venezuela and Cuba. This Cold War thinking has to be broken. Put it back in the fridge and leave it there. We need a new kind of cooking. Okay, the metaphor limps a little bit. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this morning. We will be back. Chris, good to see you. Pooja, good to see you.
Yeah, always good to see you,
Anita,
Joe.
thank you very much. And we'll be back next week with a new edition of Good Morning Revolution. Until then, stay strong, stay safe, and whatever you do, please stay in the fight. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.